Glory days are here to stay, the 80s horror show. Take a stroll down memory's lane, it's time to start the show. The gory days, the gory days, the gory days, the gory days.
Keep away from Pumpkinhead unless you're tired of living. His enemies are mostly dead, he's mean and unforgiving. Laugh at him and you're undone, but in some dreadful fashion, vengeance he considers fun, and plans it with a passion. Time will not erase or blot a plot that he has brewing. It's when you think that he's forgot, he'll conjure your undoing. Bolted doors and windows barred, guard dogs prowling in the yard won't protect you in your bed. Nothing will from Pumpkinhead. Welcome, welcome, one and all, to the first episode of The Gory Days, the show where we take a stroll down memory lane and remember wonderful movies from the 1980s through the early 1990s in what I, in my very singular opinion, believe is the golden age of horror movies. And so, welcome, everybody, people who enjoy horror movies, people who don't enjoy horror movies, people who enjoy what they don't enjoy about horror movies, and everyone else in between. Welcome to the first episode of The Gory Days. Our first movie today is a classic. Maybe you recognize it from the opening poem, but before we get into that, I want to introduce myself and my guest. I am Kyle Leone, your host with the most, the one who sits in the chair inside this tin can of a recording studio in Los Angeles, California, and spits nonsense into my microphone until I can't anymore. And with me today is...
Michael Hoyland.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. Yeah.
It's quite a big studio you got here.
Oh, thanks a lot, yeah. We managed to get rid of all of the echoing by putting in some fake walls in this warehouse that we rented out, but otherwise, yeah.
Very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah. Lots of space, lots of air conditioning. It just sounds great.
Right. Your assistant's very nice, too, I gotta say.
Oh, yeah. He tries.
Yeah.
So, it just occurred to me that I had a schedule that I wanted to follow, sort of, that I don't have on me, so...
Okay.
Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, Mike, while I pull that up on my phone?
Sure. Wow.
What's your relationship to horror? Where are you? Who are you?
Who am I, man? Who am I? My relationship to horror. So, I normally... I'm not a huge fan of the genre. I'll say that
Great start.
front. Yeah. That's good.
What are you doing here?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Is this the horror? Whoops. So, yeah, most of the time, I think a lot of the characters aren't fleshed out in these horror movies, and that's something I really care about in film in general.
Sure, but who are you?
Who am I?
People are listening to the podcast, and you're the first guest ever. Who are you? Who is Mike Holyland?
I don't know, man. I'm a
What do you call yourself? I didn't introduce you correctly. I didn't know what to say. You can see him on YouTube.
Yeah, you probably not.
Nope.
No, you can't.
Twitter?
No.
Instagram?
No.
Facebook?
No.
No, we're not going to let that one out.
Right, yeah, you can mail me if you know me. Could hit up Kyle and then hit up me.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So, no, you were saying about horror.
Yeah. That's normally it's not a favorite genre of mine, I suppose, but I do like good films and whatever genre they come.
What makes a film good to you?
What makes a film good? I guess a good moral is part of it. A good like a walk away feeling I learned a life lesson.
Oh, okay. So a catharsis.
Yeah, maybe.
Some kind of feeling that you understand yourself or maybe people a little better and can now apply it out in the world.
Yeah, that's accurate.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's unique.
Right.
Because I feel like a lot of movies don't do that.
Yeah.
So you must hate a lot of movies.
Right, yeah. I feel like, movies is probably my religion, and a lot of these movies are just blasphemy.
Okay.
That's how I feel about it.
So a great agnostic here in the studio today.
Right.
Welcome, Mike. So, the film.
Mm-hmm.
What film did we watch?
We watched the 1988 Pumpkinhead.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Pumpkinhead, probably ruined by that opening poem that it was based on, but yeah, 1988 saw the release of Pumpkinhead, a latest addition to the cult classic horror cavalcade of Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Chucky the Doll, and Pumpkinhead among them, and the Xenomorph from Alien and things like that.
Here's what's weird to me. It's based off a poem. Do you pay the author of the poem, like, rights to use it?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
So
Can we get legal in here?
Well, if we were to follow the timeline correctly, some point in time, a poem was written, and the person who wrote that poem has a name.
Yeah, I believe you.
All right, yeah.
It's Ed Justin.
Thank you very much. I am the host of this podcast, and I don't have the names of people. That's fine. That's fine.
I got my phone out. It's
So,
Ed
what was his
Justin.
name one more time?
Ed Justin.
Ed Justin, at some point in time, wrote a poem. The poem that I read at the top of the show that introduced the world to Pumpkinhead. At some point after he wrote that poem, the producers of this film got wind of it and decided that they wanted a movie written about it. Enter the writer of this film. Who do we got?
Let's look that one up, too.
Oh, I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor today, IMDb, for hosting this show. They're giving us a lot of support today. IMDb, it's a wonderful place to look up all movies, the Internet Movie Data Bunch. All right, let's see here.
Is that what it really says?
Yeah, I looked it up.
Not
before.
database? It's data bunch?
I don't know what you mean.
Okay.
I don't understand those words. So I pulled up the cast and crew here. All right, so yes, Ed Justin wrote the poem, and a combination of Mark Patrick Carducci and Stan Winston, who was the director of this movie. So if we're to continue following the timeline, after this movie gets written into a screenplay, the production company,
What is
by the name of De Laurentiis Entertainment Group,
Oh,
aka
you are prepared.
DEG,
I like it.
thank you very much,
Oh.
petitioned a man by the name of Stan Winston. Stan Winston is actually, at the time in 1987, pretty well known for having created some features for Aliens, the sequel in 1986.
Really? Wow.
So they come to Stan Winston and say, can you make this monster for us? We want you to make the Pumpkinhead monster.
So this movie came out after Alien 2.
That's correct.
Wow. And they liked whoever was the special effects? Or
They loved it
Yeah.
because the idea was that the original Alien, Alien 1, the alien is pretty slow, pretty seldomly seen. It's more suspenseful than an action.
Right.
And Aliens, the sequel, much faster. And so they asked Stan Winston, they said, we need a creature monster that can move quickly and in a scary, quick way.
Right.
And so Stan did that. And apparently the relationship was well enough that he was seeked out by DEG to make this movie, to make this creature. What's interesting is Stan Winston heard the offer and said, I would love to if I can direct.
Wow.
And so Stan Winston gets to direct his first ever feature film. He goes from a creature makeup maker, he made the monster from Relic, and like we mentioned, Aliens, to a full-on director. So following the timeline again, Stan Winston of Stan Winston Studios becomes Stan Winston the director. So he turns to his fellow monster creators and says, I'm the client now.
Yeah.
You guys do your job, and I'll do all of my new responsibilities.
I wonder how much leeway he gave them, and how much was he still hands-on?
A lot, actually.
Really?
They talk about, I was just reading some articles on StanWinstonStudios.com about the experience of the making of the movie. We'll be sure to put a link to this on the description. That he was a pleasure to work with.
Wow.
That he would go out of his way to just make sure people were doing all right and like make jokes and be goofy, and there was a culture of fun throughout the entire production.
Right on.
Which doesn't really come through in the movie. They mentioned Stan Winston's humor, sense of humor coming through in just the way he handled himself on set. I feel like it doesn't...
not in the movie at all. Not at all.
So before we get into it, Tom Woodruff Jr. is the person that portrays Pumpkinhead. He's the one that actually wears the suit, and he was one of the main people that...
I'm guessing that's his son?
No, Stan Winston was
right.
I'm sure it's Tom Woodruff's son.
Oh, I see.
Tom Woodruff Sr.'s son.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Tom Woodruff Jr. Has actually gone on to do a whole bunch of things. You can check out his IMDb. But the last thing I want to say is that this was a first-time director with a remarkably low budget for the time.
What was the budget?
In 1988, the budget was $3 million.
Okay.
Adjusting for inflation today, that's about $6.3 million in 2017.
That's really low.
It's a small amount of money. For comparison's sake, the latest Transformers The Last Night was $250 million to make. $250 million 2017 dollars.
Dang. How much? Do you know how much this movie grossed?
Oh yeah, I do. I have that written down somewhere. Nice. That's a great question. Mike with the stumpers.
Aha, I got you there.
All right.
Oh.
So I have a little thing here. Yeah. Pumpkinhead released in January 13th, 1988, after a limited release in October of 1987, as some movies like this are wont to do. It had a budget of $3 million, and it managed to gross $4,385,516 and some change. So yeah,
Someone made a cool meal off that.
it definitely is inspired a cult classic. A lot of people really, for some reason, loved Pumpkinhead. To be honest, it wasn't really critically received that great. Critics recognized that Stan Winston was a first-time director, and while he did a great job at creating Pumpkinhead on a fraction budget, he didn't do a good job of making it scary.
No,
and we'll get into that.
It's definitely not.
Yeah. Any thoughts you want to comment on some of the history or?
Oh, I don't know much about the history of it, but it's surprising that it looks really like a high budget movie, or at least a medium budget movie, and it's surprising to me that it was made on such a low dime.
I'm surprised it made as much as it did. It opened against Working Girl. Are you familiar?
I'm not.
Okay. It's held up as like the sister movie to Die Hard.
Okay.
It's got Harrison Ford, others.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. And it also opened against Gary Marshall's Beaches. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's funny. Both of these movies are more popular for the songs that they inspired. For Beaches, for what was the first
Working
movie I
Girl?
said?
Or Working Something?
For Working Girl, it was Carly Simon's "Let the River Run." That was a big
Gotcha.
song that was written for the movie and got top chart topping. And then for Beaches, it was "The Wind Beneath My Wings." "The Wind Beneath My Wings" was
I heard
written
that song
for Beaches.
Yeah, all
So
right.
both of those also did much better than Pumpkinhead opening up against. I did mention earlier that it had a limited release in October, and then its full release was in January. I personally find that very strange to release a horror movie in January. I feel like it would have done pretty well opening in October.
Right. Yep. That is an odd choice. Why limit the release right in the hot season?
In October.
Right.
That's when everybody goes to see Halloween movies.
Exactly.
For the last for a straight 7 years, Saw movies were coming out every Halloween, to the point that the taglines were, "If it's Halloween, it must be Saw."
Never heard that one.
Severing their tongue straight through the cheek. But yeah, I think we've talked a little bit enough about kind of what was going on at the time.
Are we digging into the film now?
Well, before we do, I just wanted to rattle off some of the taglines that this movie put forth in some of its marketing. Like I said, Pumpkinhead opened in 1988 with some posters of grotesque claws opening up a pumpkin, but the pumpkin looks a lot like a brain or skull, so it's a pretty graphic image, and coupled with that image were things such as cruel, devious, pure as venom, all hell's broken loose, and others. For each of man's evils, a special demon exists. And my personal favorite, a grim fairy tale. Grim with one M. We were very clever back then. So, I think that's a good time to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get right into all the wonderful things. We're going to do a quick synopsis and then talk about what we thought about the film, what we loved, what we hated, what we loved to hate, and then we'll First episode. Then we'll get some questions from our Twitter followers and some observations and things. And when we come back to the gory days.
Gory days. The gory days.
Hey guys, are you a parent? Are you a dad? Are you a mom? Are you a father? Are you a mother? If you've answered yes to any or all of these questions, this ad is for you. Because for a limited time only, McDonald's is giving away free French fries to any person that brings in their child and proves with a DNA test that they are their biological kids. Sorry, stepdads and stepmoms. Sorry, adoptive dad and adoptive moms. You guys are SOL. But for everyone who has a biolage, walk into any McDonald's and you will get free fries, provided you are able to provide a paternity or maternity test or DNA evidence that you are in fact their father or mother. McDonald's. I'm loving it.
The gory days.
All right, and we're back. Welcome to the Gory Days, the show where we take a stroll down memory lane to remember some of our favorite movies from the 1980s and early 1990s. We are talking about Pumpkinhead, and joining me here in the studio, of course, is Mike Holyland. So, for those of you who have not seen Pumpkinhead, and shame on you, you really should have listened and watched the episode before or watched the movie before listening to this episode. As soon as you saw that we were talking about Pumpkinhead, you should have watched it and then come right back. But for those of you who are pathetic and did not, we'll give a very brief synopsis of just what happens in Pumpkinhead. So, the story opens in 1957, and there's a very small family, mom, a dad, and a son, and they're holed up in a tiny little shack. And the dad is acting strange. Mama, why is Daddy acting so strange? And sure enough, he pulls up his rifle and sits by the door, and there's knocking. There's a man running through the woods, and a straight up shot of Pumpkinhead, like pretty clear,
Right.
Just like a flash. And he's banging on the door. Let me in. And he says, I'm not letting you in. I didn't kill those girls. I don't know nothing about that, and I don't want to. Until Pumpkinhead drags and lifts him to death. And that's pretty much Pumpkinhead's MO. Flash forward to present day. I love when movies do this.
Yeah, we're watching this in 2017. As present day seemed like a flashback. But
Present day would have been 1987 or 1988, but I feel like none of that's relevant because it takes place in this rural countryside that I'm not really familiar. Where is it supposed to be?
I don't know. What was odd to me is first it starts at like 1957, and you see like cars and stuff. Like,
Oh, we're there?
yeah, and so
Like trucks?
There were trucks, and like these are farmers, and
Yeah.
I don't know how that snuck in.
So we're introduced to the Harley family, Ed and son, Billy. Ed Harley is, quite honestly, a pretty good dad. He goes over and he washes his son's hands, and he tells him about some story, and then his son comes in and he says, I made you something. I have a present. And he brings it in, and it's a necklace. And instead of smacking the crap out of his son and telling him what a girl he is for doing arts and crafts and looking like Jonathan Lipnicki with his Coke bottle glasses, he accepts it and says, I'm never going to take this off.
Right, and then he puts it on.
He's a pretty good dad.
Yeah, he's a very good dad.
And he never takes it off through the whole movie.
Right.
So then, as he's telling a story, as Ed is telling a story to his son Billy, we get a jump cut to these delinquent teens that are going on.
Yeah, this is what was weird. It seemed like, okay, there was the wild brother, then his brother, and then there was these like other two who kind of, there was like the photographer lady and her friend, and it seemed like, how would that group even hang out? I mean,
Well, there's 6 of them.
Okay.
There's Chris, Joel, Kim, Steve, Tracy, and Maggie. Now, I can't tell you who's who. I
Right.
can tell you that Chris is the
bad boy?
blondish. No,
Okay,
Chris
okay.
is the blondish one that like doesn't want to do anything, and we'll get to how he
Okay.
ends up at the end. Joe is the one
That's
that is.
hey, I'm a motorcycle dude.
He's driving his car. For some reason, the other 4 are crammed into a car together,
Right.
and Joe and his girlfriend, maybe
the-
Kim, I think.
Hang on, I wrote that. Yeah,
The
her name is
relationships?
Kim.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's Joe and Kim are together.
Right.
Because it's Joe and Kim, Chris and Maggie. No. Chris
Well,
and Tracy.
mhm.
Steve is just kind of like Joe's best friend, kind of, or he has like.
I think it's his brother, right? Or someone's his
That's
brother.
right. That's right. Because
Yeah.
he says,
Yeah.
"Hey, he's my brother."
So-
Like God, just beating us over the head.
Let
with
me
exposition.
establish this relationship.
So the first lines we hear out of Joe's mouth is, "Oh, his girlfriend Kim asks, man, why do you got to bring that rifle all the time?" And Joe very manishly responds, "You'll never know what you'll find in the jungle." I don't know if he adds a yo at the end, but it sure feels like there should have been one. So they see a hitchhiker on the side of the road. They think that's funny. They keep driving, and they stop off at I'm sorry, Harley and Sons, which is Ed and his son's little
Grocery shop.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which looks kind of nice.
Yep.
The
Or
idea that
being in
Billy,
the middle of nowhere.
the idea that Billy doesn't go to school doesn't seem to faze anybody. It seems
Right.
like it's a really tight knit rural community.
Yeah, I mean it wasn't that long ago. 1988. What was
Like the teenagers are obviously modern. They come
Right.
in with dirt bikes, and that's the thing. Is like Joe is driving his car, and he asks him, "Can you give me a beer?" while driving, just like cartoonishly delinquent. And
How old are those kids?
I'm guessing at least 21.
Right,
but
they were
they
drinking.
were super delinquent.
They were drinking and driving. I have to say.
And Joe does mention that he was on probation for hitting another girl before this, and that's anyway. So they meet the Harleys. Joe and Steve are so antisocial that they have to go on dirt bikes, and then this hillbilly family pops up
Right.
with a bunch of kids in the back, and the kids are like the same color as the dirt and the grime everywhere.
Oh.
And little Jimmy Joe steals Billy's ball that he was throwing at his dog Ginger, and that's when the other hillbilly kids are like, you know what happens to bad kids who steal things?
They surround him and start chanting.
They start
reciting the poem.
They start reciting the Pumpkinhead poem, and the other teens just kind of stand and watch as these siblings harass their younger brother until one of them, I think Maggie,
the photographer lady,
says like, "Stop!"
Right, and she seems really like phased by this more than anyone.
Yeah, and then the kid Bud comes up and is like, "Like, what are you gonna do about it?" These filthy kids, they have nothing.
Yeah.
She has this camera, and they're like, "What's that?" And Bud's like, "It's a camera, dummy." It's like, "I'll take your picture," and they don't know to smile. They don't understand, and so it's like, what? Why am I afraid of these? Why is she afraid of these people? Anyway, all of this leads up to the. Oh yeah, okay. So all of this leads up to the big event, the big impetus for this. Ed has to go home and pick up some things. I don't remember. Why does he have to leave?
No, Ed. So he's delivering the feed, some
Oh, that's
cattle
right. He
feed
forgot it.
for that family, the hillbilly family.
For Big
comes in.
Bud.
Right. So he has to go and ship that out, and he's like telling his kid, "Hey, just sit here and stay inside." Of course, the dog runs out after the motorcycles.
That damn dog hears the motorcycles and runs out,
Right.
and then that damn kid chases that damn dog into the damn motorcycles, and sure enough, squash!
Yeah.
Billy gets landed on, I think, by a
Yeah,
motorcycle.
it looks like he gets hit. Here's what's kind of odd is whenever there's like any intense action, it seems like it's like shot into one half and then like the other half, and they
You
kinda,
never
like,
see any impacts.
Right. Nothing ever happens in the same shot. I guess that's expensive to do because you need to have stunts.
A stunt kid?
Yeah. So they just kind of, you figure out what happened because you saw.
It comes up several times where you're shown, like, oh my gosh, this is about to happen. And then you're suddenly not shown the main thing, and then you see
the
it
aftermath.
after.
Yeah.
So it's a really weird shot, and it really confused me because I thought Billy was instantly killed. And I was under the
it's really
impression...
confusing.
It's really confusing because Billy's blinking,
Right.
but they're like caring for him. They don't know what they're doing. One of them says, "Keep him warm."
Yeah.
It's like...
It's super hot out.
It's a crazy hot sunny day, and he's like, "Keep him warm." They put the jacket on him, and then when the dad... Oh, okay, so Joe says...
They're like, don't move him.
Yeah, they don't...
Yeah,
I mean, that's smart. That's smart. They don't move him and things, but what's
But
not
like,
smart...
they could have gotten him to like a hospital maybe or
They could
some
have called
shit.
911?
Right.
They could have... But the whole thing is that Joe has... He's already on probation.
He's got priors, man. He's got priors.
He's got priors. They're going to find him. They're going to throw him into the clink.
And he was drinking.
He was drinking.
Yeah.
He was drinking, and so a drunk driver killed Ed's son. Ed returns and finds his dead son. Steve says, "It was an accident. Can we help?" And Ed gives him this look.
I'm gonna kill you.
I wish it was you.
Yep.
I wish it was you. Is what it says on his face. So then they just gotta leave.
Yeah.
Steve gets the...
This is also like a big hysteria by the other teenagers. Like
They get to a cabin.
Like one of them, Emma, like freaks out, or I don't know, one of them.
Oh, Maggie.
Maggie, that's
like,
yeah.
She's like shocked.
Right. Because she almost prevented the kid from running in, but she didn't.
she tripped.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess she feels some kind of
feels guilty for it.
That's a really good observation. That is not really clear.
Right.
Because she's like sitting on the couch, and I thought she was passed out.
Frozen. Yeah, it's weird.
Chris carries her in and like puts her on the couch, and I thought, oh.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
And then Joe starts unloading on all of them. He decks Chris. Chris punches Joe, and then Joe clobbers him in the back of the head.
Which also is weird because you see the punch, and then like it's clearly fake.
Yeah.
Like,
It's one of those stage punches where it's like, I'll stand between you and the audience and go, pow!
Right, and then he just falls off into the distance.
Reaches for a log, then clobbers him, and then I guess...
And that's also, like, you see him taking the log and about to strike him, and then the next cut is...
him falling.
Just already bleeding out.
Yeah. Super weird. Yeah. So that's how Joe establishes...
They gotta have a budget for that, you know, is what I'm saying.
I hope. Where did most of the money go? It couldn't have all gone into Pumpkinhead.
It probably did. Pumpkinhead looks great,
It really does. Yeah, so anyway, Joe establishes his dominance over the other teens, and then we go back to Ed.
So let me. One thing that happens is they try to call.
Oh, that's right.
They try to call the police, but Joe yanks out the phone line, and then he locks them up in the closet. The two that were trying to...
That's the first thing he does when he gets there is rip the phone line out, and then he just kind of stares. There's this weird energy that Joe puts forth that he's like, he's scared. I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is I have to stop you guys from doing the thing that doesn't seem right to me. And in that way, it's pretty good. I feel like it comes off that he's like a desperate, incidentally dangerous, scary guy.
Right.
That we were all just gonna go to this cabin and have sex and have a good time, and now he's beating the shit out of all of us and locking us up in closets. And
there was also like his girlfriend was kind of like, oh, don't start with him, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, he's
Kim was the one that said he's got a prior from when he hit that little girl and she got hurt. So no, we can't go to the police or anything. So that's when Ed delivers his feed to Bud and his super poor family, but incidentally he brings Bill's body and shows it to Bud and asks Bud, I heard about a old woman, lives somewhere around here, but it's like, I don't know anything about that. You just go home and bury your boy.
Yeah, at first he's like, when he's about to pay him, he's like, oh, don't worry about it if you can help me out finding this woman. And then he gives him the money. He's like, no, I don't want...
That's his way of saying, I don't want in this trouble.
Right.
You just take him, and you bury the vengeance that you feel in your heart with him. But Kid Bud is a kid and doesn't understand the repercussions.
He looks like Ron Weasley.
He does. Yeah. He does have a Ron Weasley look to him. Yeah. So Kid Bud tells him of Haggis, who lives out in the middle of the woods. And, so... Ed asks him to show him the way there. He goes about halfway, and then we're shown a swamp, I guess, that exists somewhere in this rural countryside, and that's where we meet the old... I'm going to call her a witch. Yeah. She seems like a witch. Haggis. And I love that she's just sitting in front of a roaring fire, enjoying the fire. I mean, it's clear that she takes care of her home. Right. It's not as dirty as I imagine.
No, it's pretty clean, yeah. There's like candles laid out, too, and
like freshly lit candles. It's cleaner than some hoarder homes I've seen.
No, definitely.
Witches take care of themselves. So it was funny seeing that.
Not of her personally. She was gross, but her house, immaculate.
Yeah, she could use some lotion. Right. She could take care of her skin.
Yeah, she hasn't moisturized in a while. It's clean.
And she had a southern accent, but I couldn't tell if it like had a little bit of like a twang to it, like she was from the bayou. I couldn't really tell, if she was one of those witches, but she's the one that tells him that there's a way to get this, and all you have to do is dig it up at a graveyard where people, what was it? It's where people bury their kin they don't want. So he goes, and
Mm.
he's like, oh, how will I know? You'll know. So he just walks around with a shovel.
Well, first off, he wants to like help revive his kid.
That's right.
But she's like, no, I can't do that. There's nothing I can do for him. And then he's
I wonder if she's tried before, and that's why she says, that's not something I can do because it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Or she's just like,
she's not strong enough,
right.
or it's literally not possible.
Right.
She knows it.
Right.
This is a world where demons exist, but resurrection completely out of the question.
Can't happen.
Yeah, can't happen. It's like Genie's rules: can't raise people back from the dead, can't make people fall in love. What's the third rule?
I don't know. Can't wish for more wishes.
Yeah, can't wish for more wishes. That's it. God, the obvious one.
Yeah.
I feel like. But no, her place is so funny. She's got an owl like up in
Oh,
the
yeah,
rafters.
that-
She's got a rat in like a different area of the house.
Yeah.
It's like this just
And
she's
you,
a witch.
you never see the owl again, by the way.
No.
It's just one shot.
I bet that owl has a name though.
Yeah.
It's something like Artemis or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah.
Or Minerva, who knows? But yeah, I found that super funny. And then for no reason, he pulls out a bunch of like silver pieces.
Right. He wants to pay her.
Did he
for-
just have those?
Maybe he like grabbed them before he
Was he
went to the witch?
collecting them?
I don't know. It seemed like maybe some of it was his wife's.
And who told him that she needs
she
silver?
accepts silver. That's how she works, man.
Like he went.
That's what black magic needs.
He skipped money,
Yeah.
skipped roots and like berries and food. I don't
Yeah.
know. Skipped Eye of Newt and went straight to silver. Is
And
that a
she-
thing in mythology?
I don't. I mean, I guess it's a precious metal. It might make. She might need it in some spells or something. I don't know.
Anyway, he wanders around. He finds a plateau of like a above ground grave that's
Mhm.
still underground, and he digs up.
Well, first off, she doesn't seem really interested in the money at all. Like it's not. She didn't ask for it or anything like
She didn't
that.
really accept it.
Yeah. So.
But it's the transaction that
Alright.
makes her go, okay,
Yeah.
like this is what you'll find. So he
Yeah.
brings home a shriveled up baby Pumpkinhead,
Mhm.
and then she does a pretty realistic witch like
Uh,
ritual, which is basically just your blood in
mhm.
various places, and then Pumpkinhead is this little itty bitty baby. And I don't know, I guess it's my fault. I was kind of expecting Pumpkinhead to kind of age with the movie, but
Mm.
instead it's newborn Pumpkinhead and then
And-
teenage Pumpkinhead
right.
and then a full grown
Pretty quickly,
Pumpkinhead.
yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I'm not disappointed. It's just like he ages pretty quickly. And then goes around doing what he does best, pulling people and lifting them up until they
Mhm.
die. Yeah.
He kind of
So-
toys with them.
That's what. Oh,
yeah.
it's so funny.
Yeah.
Pumpkinhead has this weird, like, fascination with like playing with his kills.
Right.
He takes. I think it's Maggie,
Mm-hmm.
who the first person that sees Steven get killed because she runs out into the woods and Steven's like, "Look at your cross. You're gonna be okay."
Yeah, and then she snaps out of her whatever trance she was in.
For a second,
Yeah.
before Pumpkinhead lifts Steven away.
Right.
Then Pumpkinhead lifts Maggie away and
Mhm.
kind of like starts to claw a cross on her face to
Right.
like make fun of her.
I don't know.
Whatever. Anyway, the funny part is that he takes Maggie and is like holding her up in the window and is like doo-doo-doo, and then smashes her through it. and
Yeah,
then leaves
I
her
wasn't
there.
sure if that was supposed to be funny or not.
Maybe that was some of Steven,
Maybe that's the humor coming through.
some of his patented humor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super funny. Who is it? Oh, Ed. Ed starts to realize what's going on because he's feeling like these weird, like, trances or convulsions. I don't know. The scene gets oversaturated and stuff, and so he goes back to the witch. He goes back to Haggis and says, "Not like this. I didn't want to like this." And she's like, "You can't stop it now." Yeah. Then what happens?
Yeah. Well, she's like, "You can't stop it now, Ed. You'll die too."
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Mhm. So then we go back to the cabin in the woods. Joe has found a kitchen machete. He runs out into the night and screams, "I'm the one you want." All of a sudden, for no reason, suddenly realizing after 3 of his friends have died that this is the stakes. I should just turn myself in.
Mhm.
Dying to the monster is better than going to prison.
Right. But before they even go out, there's like a point where he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna do the right thing. I'm gonna call the police or whatever." He lets the other guys go out.
That's
and
right.
Calls it.
He says,
like-
"I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going
Yeah.
to do it now." And he
Right.
lets them out, and they don't beat the crap out of him.
Yeah.
They're still like kind of trepidatious around
Right.
him.
He doesn't tell that to them. He
He
tells
doesn't
that to
say
his
anything.
girlfriend.
Yeah. He doesn't say to them, "I'm letting you out because I'm doing the right thing."
Right.
He lets them out to ostensibly trick them some more
Yeah.
or lock them
And
up
they
somewhere
just seem
else.
like relieved and they understand everything. They're like, "Oh yes, he's doing the right thing. He's good now."
Yeah, so now them, because they had this time inside the closet together, they're like a couple, or I mean,
I don't know.
they're linked because
Even before they were like,
that's
at
true.
least buddies or something.
And they
like
were like the morally righteous ones.
Right, which it seems like it was weird to me that they even hung out with the other guys. Like that's a weird group of friends.
So then the next thing I remember is Pumpkinhead being at the top of a really high tree, way up there, holding on to.
Branches.
It must have been Tracy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, whatever. But he's holding on to her and he drops her. And once again, this is another one of those weird shots where you see her fall, then you see the people watching her,
Right.
and then you see her on a rock.
Mhm.
A big, big rock.
Yep.
Like, she definitely died as soon as she hit that. Kind of would have been nice to see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
Maybe it was...
No money for that.
Yeah, maybe it was in the 1980s. Maybe they didn't want to show that. So let's just get to the end. They find Bud. Chris and Maggie find Bud, and Jesus, they do this thing. Oh wait, no, I got ahead of myself a little bit. First, Pumpkinhead, like they beat him, like he falls, and
Yeah, they shoot him too,
Mhm.
right? Ed comes back and shoots him.
Ed comes back and shoots Pumpkinhead, and Pumpkinhead falls, and Ed is like, "Whoa, I'm so woozy," and they're like, "He's dead." And, oh no! One of them's like, "You don't know if he's dead."
Right.
So
then
Joe
Joe's
walks
like,
over to it. Joe, the
"Oh, he's
forensic
dead."
expert, shoots it in the head,
Yeah.
and then goes, "Oh, he's dead."
Yeah.
And then Pumpkinhead grabs him and gets Joe.
Mhm.
And I didn't expect him to get him that early. I kind of expected Joe to last, I don't know, a little bit longer.
Right.
Because in that way, Ed doesn't really get any revenge or catharsis
No.
or anything.
Here's the thing, though. He didn't know who it was
Mm.
who killed this kid. When he's talking to the hillbilly family, he's like,
City folk.
City folk. Exactly, yeah. He doesn't know who killed him. It was city folk who
It's
killed
just
him.
the other killed
Right.
him. They were all complicit,
Yeah,
basically.
so to him, they're all guilty of this.
And there's an argument to be made. So Pumpkinhead kills Joe by penetrating him with a rifle. It's a really funny moment that you think Pumpkinhead is just going to shoot him with the gun, and instead stabs him with the rifle,
Yeah,
which is better.
It's weird because he holds it in a way that you kind of would hold a rifle.
Yeah,
And I was like,
he's a
wait, is he
demon.
going to shoot him? But then he just, like, stabs him through it. So, like, okay, all right, that's fine.
I thought that was hilarious. And then Pumpkinhead is apparently friend to animals because that's when a dog starts biting Ed. and
Yeah,
he's like,
I didn't
"Arr."
understand that.
Is
so,
that the movie's way of saying, oh, Ed is linked to Pumpkinhead, and so the animal doesn't
Maybe.
like him? But it
It's
seemed
weird.
like it really seemed like Pumpkinhead summoned the animal to attack him. The animal was there. Pumpkinhead roared.
So
then the animal
was it
attacked.
there? Like, it kind of just popped into the scene.
Well, there was the dude. It was like some other hillbilly guy who was like, "You guys get out of
Right.
here, or else I'll shoot." And they're like, "Please, we just want to use your truck." And then
Yeah.
poof, Pumpkinhead's there.
Yeah.
Old man shoots him, goes down. Joe thinks he's dead. Yeah. Then Act 3, where we find the burned church that Bud takes them to. And that's when we get beaten over the head with stuff we already know. We've watched the whole movie, and Bud still has to explain to Chris and Maggie, or no.
The Tale of Pumpkinhead.
What is her name?
I don't know.
Ah, God
Don't
dang
know.
it. Whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
the final girl.
Right.
The final girl and Chris, the legend of Pumpkinhead. And he, like, really gets into it as if we hadn't been watching the whole
Right,
movie.
right.
All I could think, I wrote this
Previously on Pumpkinhead.
I wrote this in big giant capital letters. We know! We know! And then they get into the slowest chase ever.
So they go inside of a church.
Mhm.
It's a burnt down church. It's like
It's hallowed ground.
It's it's got no roof. It's just got like a skeleton of a church.
Yeah.
And there's this big wooden cross in the back, which kind of has a scene on itself.
Yeah. So they get away. They see Pumpkinhead in the doorway.
And then they bolt from
run.
the other side.
Scene goes on as
Right.
Pumpkinhead meanders his way
Right.
slowly around the church.
Which I didn't get it. Like, is Pumpkinhead trying to convert, or is he trying to, like seeing to light?
Is this supposed to be scary?
I don't
Is
know.
it supposed to break down like, oh, he's a demon. Demons hate churches and crosses. Nope. It's supposed to just say like he is all powerful and nothing's gonna stop
Right.
him.
He then tears apart the
The
cross,
cross,
and continues on his chase.
The slowest
But
chase.
yeah.
So then I love this.
But I think it has a part to do with him being linked to Ed. Like, maybe that's Ed.
Losing his faith.
Well, maybe. Maybe
That's
not
an interesting take.
wrestling with it. you know?
Okay. Well,
So,
let's
like,
save the analysis
okay, all right.
for a little bit. We're
Sure,
almost
sure,
done.
sure.
My favorite death. Pumpkinhead can set traps. Pumpkinhead turned over their cars.
Oh yeah.
But left.
Yes, this was hilarious.
But left the dirt bike intact,
Yeah.
just sitting there.
Right,
so that
right.
Chris runs up to it, telling Maggie's
Right.
like, "Don't," and he's like, "Stay there." Was his plan to ditch her?
Yeah, maybe he's gonna call for help. I don't know.
Because he turns on the motorcycle, he revs it, and then Pumpkinhead is like, nah,
Got your chain,
got
bro.
the bike chain. Pumpkinhead, the mechanic who
Right.
understands how motorcycles.
Not just that, he's got like the fine motor skills to take apart the link of
and mock him with it.
Oh.
I go, nah, not with your chain. Oh man. So then there's like, there's a weird shot where where Bud and Maggie have gotten into a house because Ed came and said, "Come with me. I'm going to keep you safe." So the final girl tells Bud, "I'm going to go talk to him, to Mr. Hurley." And then Bud kind of looks at this weird altar to Billy. There's like candles and pictures of Billy on like a beer cask.
Yeah, maybe.
Was that Ed? Did he make that?
I assume so. I mean, who else would do that?
Yeah, I guess you're right. But then the funniest thing happens. My favorite movie, Face Off, happens, where Pumpkinhead's face suddenly becomes Ed's.
Yeah.
And then finally we're shown what they've been hinting at for a while now, that
So before, whenever Pumpkinhead was injured, Ed was injured too, and vice versa. Whenever like a pitchfork went through Ed.
that's the big moment, is that Ed has his flamethrower.
Yeah,
his
which
makeshift
just out of nowhere, he
flamethrower.
just MacGyver's his flamethrower.
Is that on farms? Do you need flamethrowers to clear out
Maybe.
crops and dead stuff?
I don't know.
That
But it
doesn't
seems like he's working on it for
it looks like he made it.
right, like, but it didn't take him long.
Nope, he's a MacGyver.
Boom.
Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah.
So he ditches it immediately because it gets caught on a nail, and then he gets stabbed with the pitchfork, and then it's the most obvious moment where it's like, oh, they're 1-to-1.
Right.
They're connected physically.
Yep.
And so Ed figures that out and starts beating the shit out of himself, kind of, a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
And then tries to shoot himself in the
And then
head.
he runs into his car, and he has a pistol there, and there's like he holds the gun up to his temple.
It's yet again another one of those weird moments. He holds the gun up to his temple. We see
then it
some of the
cuts
teens
to-
struggling. A
Yeah.
gunshot happens,
right, and then Pumpkinhead
Falls
kind
down.
of falls.
and then we see
Like, oh yeah, he's dead. He killed
Ed
himself.
with kind of a bullet hole.
Right,
I can't
right.
really tell.
Maybe it was like a fleshish wound.
because he holds it, kind of looks like it wouldn't go.
Right,
It-
right.
Yeah,
It would
just
go
like
up.
grazed him.
Yeah.
So then he drops the gun. Final girl realizes that they're linked. Still kind of hesitates at like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna shoot Pumpkinhead.
Well, I mean, she's like, should I kill this guy who's right?
Who was the good guy? We killed
Right.
his son.
Right,
Should I
right,
kill
right.
him too? And
Yeah.
he's saying, kill me. 'Cause
Right. He
if
knows.
you kill me, and look at Pumpkinhead.
Yep.
So she does, and Pumpkinhead dies.
Mhm.
And let's see what happens at the end then.
Pumpkinhead's body just bursts into flame.
That's right. Pumpkinhead spontaneously combusts.
Yeah.
They're like breathing. They're finally being able to sigh relief, and then he bursts into a bunch of flames. And then the neat little twist:
right.
you see Haggis at the
Pumpkin.
pumpkin plateau,
Mhm.
burying a new Pumpkinhead, a new shriveled up Pumpkinhead. And what does this new Pumpkinhead have around his neck?
The same necklace his son gave him.
The same necklace Billy made, the one that he said he would never take off.
Yep.
hmm
Yep. That was really cool.
So that's the
I
movie
like
of Pumpkinhead, and then it goes straight into the credits.
that. Yep.
So now's the wonderful part of the show that we talk about some of the analysis and some of the things that we gleaned from the movie, some of the things that we thought it was trying to tell us, that it failed to tell us, and wonderful things like that. So,
So I liked
thank you.
when so at first I was like, who the heck is burying Pumpkinhead in this this weird patch? You know, it's kind of like
So let's break down what Pumpkinhead's mythos is.
Mhm.
Apparently, if you experience an injustice great enough to inspire vengeance in your heart,
you could
that
summon-
vengeance can manifest into a demon of vengeance. And it calls back to the tagline, and it's a line that Haggis actually says: for every one of man's evils, there's a demon. I want to make sure I get it right. What is it?
I like that. So at first I was like, who the heck is burying this thing? Because we first see Pumpkinhead take this other guy who killed the girls back in 1957.
So Pumpkinhead ostensibly is a vegetable that needs to be cultivated with vengeance every now and then.
Right.
Is that
right.
accurate? That's not accurate.
I don't know, but he does grow
Mm-hmm.
like a vegetable, and
Yeah.
he is kind of planted. But what was weird to me, like when I first was watching it, like, oh, what? Who buried the last Pumpkinhead? And I was like, why is this?
Is it Haggis every time?
Yeah, it must have been. Maybe she's like, what do you call it? Immortal or ethereal? I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a strange element. Is essentially Pumpkinhead is replaced every time Pumpkinhead's summoned.
Right.
I guess.
Which I thought was really cool because it
That is
means
cool.
that every time the new Pumpkinhead felt remorse that he shot or caused Pumpkinhead to happen, so he killed himself
It's the
and tried to save the people he was trying to get vengeance at.
it's the moral, or like the lesson that I think is to be learned, is that vengeance corrupts, absolutely. And even if you want to summon this demon and think that you're totally separate from that demon, eventually the vengeance will take over you, and it will
Right.
it'll be your end, and
Yep.
you will become the demon of vengeance. I like the implication that every time a person feels so wronged that they need to summon Pumpkinhead, it ends with them becoming the demon of vengeance.
So
It's
I
pretty
thought that
great.
was really cool. Yeah.
It's almost because Ed became the demon of vengeance the moment he looked at Steven with that look on his face, and
Yeah.
the moment he decided, I need to go to Haggis.
Yeah, it was just kind of weird. Like his son wasn't quite dead yet.
No, and that's what was weird. I thought he was.
Right.
I thought the boy was just a bad actor because the
Yeah.
boy's blinking
Right,
a
right.
lot, and I was thought, oh, he's just a terrible actor. That kid's
Right.
dead.
But he like repeats some.
He says one more. Yeah.
Yeah.
He brings him home, and he's repeating the story that he told him.
Yeah, about the great son or something like that,
Uh-huh.
and then the son finishes the
says,
story.
Daddy,
Yeah,
and then he dies,
right.
and that's when he dies, and it's kind
Right.
of yeah.
Yeah, they should have made that clear.
Yeah.
He should just bike hit some dead kid.
So the biggest players in this movie are Billy, the kid, Ed, Harley and Ed, Haggis, the witch, Pumpkinhead, of course, and Kid Bud. The kid
Who looks like Ron Weasley.
yeah, the Ron Weasley kid who
Yeah.
ends up intervening a lot. So this whole movie paints Pumpkinhead and the mythos and everyone that believes in it as being from a backwater, rural, closed-off, hating of city folk community.
Right.
I don't know. What do you think of Hollywood portraying people who live off the land as
Yeah.
inherently backwater and believing in witchcraft and all kinds of stuff?
Well, they believe in it, but it is real. That's the thing. It's sort of like, oh, city folk don't understand.
Does that make it better? Does it?
I don't know.
Does legitimizing the podunk people's ignorance and belief in?
Well, it's not ignorance if it's real.
I guess
so.
you're
Yeah,
right.
it is.
But I'm talking. Okay, so yes, within the universe of Pumpkinhead, they
Yeah.
are legitimized in believing this crazy thing.
Mhm.
In the meta world of the real world, Hollywood
Right.
is perpetuating this idea that if you're from the city who go and see these movies,
Right.
be careful about going out into the country because Leatherface is out there, Pumpkinface is out there, the monster from Jeepers Creepers is out there, all out in the rural
wilderness.
backwater.
Yeah.
There's this villainizing of like Children of the Corn, just a rural, closed-off community that isn't really connected with other things, and somehow that inherently inspires evilness in it. And
I think it's part of like
what do you think?
the audience is mostly city urban Hollywood,
Urbanites.
right? And so what do you fear? You fear the unknown. Most people haven't been to these small towns in the middle of nowhere, and so you don't know.
That leads to my next question. Who is this movie for? Because the bad guys are the city folk. And then
Well,
everyone's a bad guy.
yeah, kind of. I mean, so first off, most of them didn't even do anything
No,
bad or
they even
responsible.
tried to stop it.
Right. But what's his name? Ed is like, hey, they killed my kid.
They're city folk.
Right. They
It's
city
us
folk.
versus
They do
them.
crazy things for no reason. So he kind of becomes the villain. He becomes the
But what do you think about that? As
Yeah.
the movie, as the audience member, typically in a movie, the protagonist and the antagonist are pretty obviously separate in who
Right.
is who. This is a remarkably gray moral.
I really like that about it.
area.
I
Yeah,
thought
you
that
did?
was good, yeah. Because a good movie to me has no villains. I mean, it's easy if you're like, oh, this person's just evil. It's easy to just want bad things to happen to them. But when you're like, oh, did I want something bad to happen to Ed? Not really. He just lost his son.
I would hazard to even call Haggis evil. I would hesitate to even call Haggis evil.
Well, I would still call her evil.
You would?
Yeah, because she knew what was going to happen.
That's true. And I feel like she did try to warn
right.
him. But
she did, but it was kind of like, yeah, they never listen.
That's true. Yeah, that's kind of she has this she has this air about her at the end that's kind of like the Chinaman, the Chinaman. Oh my God, 2017. I'm sorry, any Chinese American or Chinese listeners out there. That's not what I meant. I am referring to the man who is in Gremlins and gives the family the mogwai and then comes home and takes it at the end. He's like, you guys knew. I told you what would happen. Dumb white man.
I haven't seen the movie, but yeah.
Oh, we should watch Gremlins. That'd be another good one. Yeah, so she has this air about her. It's like, I told him.
Right.
I told him, and now I'm burying him.
Right. Yeah, she warns him several times, but she's like, well, this is how things are. It's the natural order of things. You gotta bury some pumpkinheads every few centuries or so.
Yeah, this movie manages to subvert a number of horror tropes that carried a lot of what this genre is, what I thought it was. Things like the final girl. There are 2 people that survive at the end. Yes. 3 if you count Bud, who he wasn't really chasing after anyway. Yes. It's typical that one person survives, and it's usually the woman. So this was interesting to see Chris kind of barely survive. He raises his arm. I thought he was dead once again.
It was really unclear whether he was dead or not for a long time, but you do see him at the end, so he does make it. There was also like Joe's girlfriend, Kim. There was like a whole part of the movie where she was kind of doing nothing. She was kind of like actively doing nothing.
Yeah, I don't even remember her being in the movie for a while.
And then we see her dragged, and then she's dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or is she the one that gets dropped?
She gets dropped.
So,
but before that, she doesn't do anything.
No. she even like is the one that protests the others. Like, no, Joe's got priors. We gotta be careful. She furnishes him alcohol while he's driving. Yeah. She's nothing but an enabler to this monster that is him. So, how about the portrayal of the women in this movie? Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I mean, there's definitely the main girl. We don't know her name.
That's a big problem for me. I feel like I was able to keep track of some of the other characters,
names,
but this is what happens when you have an ensemble as basically the same character. They're the teens, they're the city folk, and the movie reinforces that they're just kind of a group and they're gonna die in a cabin. Like, that's a trope that isn't subverted, but it does kind of blend them all away. Unfortunately, I remember Chris's name, Steve's name, Joe's name. I remember Maggie's name because she had the cross and was weird. But Kim and Tracy are completely
they're like the good guys. They're the I guess there are no real bad guys in this one, but they're the nice guys.
They just don't have any agency. They have nothing really to do, and I feel like they don't really influence the plot in any way, especially toward the end when Chris and the final girl are running away. I feel like Chris is the one making a lot of the decisions and like where they're going. Stay here until the end, where she picks up the gun and basically has no choice. The plot dictates the movie needs to end.
Yeah.
So
she was saving him because Pumpkinhead still had Chris.
That's true. She did save the day, and that's something I like about horror movies is that they do kind of not worry about if men are being hailed as the heroes of story, because seeing a woman as the final girl is typically like a desperate thing. It's like, oh wow, is she gonna make it? And then she does, unless there's another big scare. So that continues with the trope. I thought that was a great job that she delivers the final blow. It's just, once again, I don't know who this movie was for, because it's certainly not even for lovers of monsters. Pumpkinhead is so slow. He doesn't really do anything except lift people.
And he kind of toys with his, like, for a while he was stepping on that last dude who...
Yeah! Who doesn't die! Right, Chris doesn't die. He was just like, you're not going anywhere, buddy.
Yeah. But, the monster looked great, though.
Yeah, so, Pumpkinhead. Scary, not scary.
Not scary. No.
Not scary.
Not
and I'm
scary
sorry
at
to
all.
any people who watched it in 1988 as a 6-year-old and it just scared the
Frighten them,
pants off you, because in this day and age, not scary.
No.
Why?
Maybe it is because we've seen such better CGI and such better looking films that we like don't see this as a movie anymore. We see it as like a puppet now.
I mean, think of the context. This was a director who was a monster movie creator who had to create a monster on a shoestring budget.
Right.
So at the end of the day, there's something to be celebrated in that it's a pretty great costume.
Yeah.
I've seen
it's beautiful,
some other 80s horror movies from the era, and some of the costumes are embarrassing.
Yeah, like this looks better than E.T.
It looks pretty much on par with the Xenomorphs.
I don't know if that is, but yes, I agree.
Oh, from Alien.
Okay, gotcha.
One thing that kind of bothered me, and it's something that happens in 80s movies. You know that cicada sound that accompanies? Yeah, the
Yeah.
I heard it in The Thing first, and I thought it was greatly used then, and I didn't realize that a lot of movies used it, because it's a really alien, weird sound, the cicada sound. I just found it really annoying. Yeah. Every time he showed up, it's like, all right, I guess he's letting out another one. Just that's the sound of Pumpkinhead letting one rip.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Any other thoughts you wanted to comment? Anything that made you think? Anything that made you? Go,
there was
that was weird.
There was like there's a scene where Pumpkinhead, like they're all in the kitchen or living room, and Pumpkinhead just walks by the window, and none of them see it. It's a large scene where
what'd you think of that?
I don't know. I thought that was comedy.
It seemed silly.
Yeah.
And when I look back on it now, though, I think like I kind of wish movies would do that a little bit more. I'm not thrilled that it's all of Pumpkinhead you see walking by the window, but like if we had just saw like his tail or something like that, just little like gifts to observant audience members.
Right.
I love when movies do stuff like that. In the most recent It remake, there's the opening scene with with Pennywise and Georgie. There's a shot of Pennywise and he starts to drool. It cuts to Georgie, and we get cut back to Pennywise, and there is no drool. There's something just really cool about gaslighting the audience that I really respond to. So I like that scene. In retrospect, when I was watching, it was silly.
But it looked really cheesy because it was just like a huge guy in the giant window, and they're all like oblivious to it.
Yeah.
So that was odd. There was also like just a machete in the
kitchen machete
just showed up out of nowhere.
2 cleavers, a kitchen machete, in this cabin in the woods that they rented.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to say is that Pumpkinhead, like I said, there's something to be celebrated here in that I don't think we would have as interesting movie monsters today without some of the, giants that we've built on, like the alien from Aliens that the studio created, Pumpkinhead himself. And yeah, it's just funny. I guess I haven't watched enough movies to know, maybe I will because of this podcast, but I haven't watched enough movies to know if the idea of a demon, I guess that's a pretty common story. It's like in Hellraiser and a bunch of things of a demon being summoned for a person's petty needs, whether it's them wanting pleasure, them wanting vengeance, them wanting power. It's a pretty common trope. So if there's anything being perpetuated, it's demons bad. Just deal with things on your own.
No.
Don't mess with things beyond your control. Life is to be lived, not to be tampered with, not to be abused. I feel like there's common threads in a lot of horror movies, like Pet Sematary, and just letting dead things lie, not trying to raise them back up, not trying to get vengeance for them. Sorry, you want to say one thing?
No, there's a whole back in the 1957 flashback. We see like, oh, those are your sins, you deal with them, sort of thing. People stepped away from it, and I like when it's not just like, oh, the scary beast is coming out for no reason. There's something like morally wrong that you've done that is this thing's coming back for you for.
And I like that the common folk were well aware of it and knew the rules.
Right.
This is, you do not get in its way. You let it do its thing.
It only kills those who have been marked, is what they say.
Are there any real world allusions to something like that?
I don't know.
Because, of course, there were folk tales and stuff, don't go out after dark, or the boogeyman will get you, and things like that people have made up. But I wonder if, this was a poem. I wonder if there's legends in rural communities of vigilantes, essentially, like that do the things that people can't do or won't do to get vengeance. I think it comes from once upon a time of mob mentality of people going out and taking the law into their own hands and then creating a story because everyone knows what they did. Like the whole town strung up and lynched this guy.
Takes their guilt away.
Exactly.
Comes this, yeah.
Yeah. So in another way, I think I would have enjoyed it if there was more of like, Pumpkinhead doesn't exist without the intense feelings. This kind of seems to imply that you could go get Pumpkinhead right now if you wanted. Yeah. He won't do anything for you because you don't have vengeance, but he's a little itty bitty baby in the pumpkin patch. And if you get some blood from your dead son,
this kind of bothered me.
Yeah.
Just like the special effects thing, you could easily see the blood squib on the knife.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, it's like the blood is flowing from the knife to his hand downwards. I was like, that's so easy
when
to
she
get.
cuts his hand?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I want to give a big shout out to the actor that plays Ed.
Who looks kind of like Clint Eastwood?
Yeah, Lance Henriksen has this face that looks like he was born to be in horror movies.
Great.
He looks like a gravekeeper, like all the time. So this guy apparently has been working nonstop since 1980. You can look at his IMDb, and there is no year.
Jeez.
There's no year break. He's constantly working. He's still alive. He's got like 9 projects in pre-production, post-production on IMDb.
Anything famous?
I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like I probably should have looked him up, but yeah. So as always, here's the part of the show where we talk about what we thought about the movie. We rate the movie on a scale of 0 to 5 thumbs, 0 being the worst and 5 being the best. Pumpkinhead. What do you think about it, Mike?
So I know we said a lot of good things about the movie, but as a whole, meh.
Which isn't terrible.
Right.
It's certainly not winning any awards.
Yeah.
So how many thumbs?
I think it deserves at least 1 thumb. I'm thinking about giving it the 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And who do these thumbs belong to?
I think one is definitely a pumpkin thumb is in there. Who gets the second thumb?
A gross gray elongated thumb.
Yeah, that's 1 thumb right there. Maybe the nameless girl. She gets another
whoever
thumb. Whoever she was.
Final girl whose name we couldn't remember.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, I should ask why. Why two thumbs?
Well, I think, like I said, what I like most about movies is like the moral or the lesson of what's happening, and I think, there was no meaningless enemy. It was like vengeance was the bad thing. So there was that was cool. But it's more like a great concept, but a meh execution. It's just like, they missed a lot of things, and
it's easy to say that it's because it's his first time directing. It's easy to say that it's because he's more familiar with creature effects than maybe with scene to scene action.
Right.
Or even shot to shot, it feels like sometimes.
And also, like, we don't get to see any of the action. It's kind of cut out. So, I don't know. But it looked good. Like, the colors, the monsters, like, it looked like a good film.
Yeah, I gotta say, those shots where it's, like, flashing, you know, so that you don't really get a good look at the monster and things like that. There were some really great shots.
Right.
One of my favorite shots is, I think it's a crane where Ed discovers the plateau of pumpkins, and he climbs up on top, and he just kind of stands there with his shovel, and I'm like, wow, that's a great wallpaper. That's pretty iconic. Like, that's Pumpkinhead. 2 thumbs, right. Mike. All right.
How about you?
I am also going to give it 2 thumbs.
2 thumbs.
And it's because...
Now, wait. Let me ask you the same question. Whose thumbs are these?
1 thumb belongs to Jimmy Joe, the poor youngest boy who took Billy's ball.
Okay.
And the other...
Ron Weasley, we'll call him.
No, that's Bud. Bud's the older brother.
Gotcha.
Jimmy Joe is the little boy.
Oh, the one they surrounded.
Yeah.
With. Okay.
And the other thumb is going to go to Ginger and her little Dewclaw, the dog. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's because the movie does a good job of setting up a muddled, morally gray story between a understandably enraged father and understandably confused and terrified kids who caused an accident. Then it doesn't really do much with that.
Yeah.
It even has a monster in it, and he kind of just like meanders around.
Yeah.
Pumpkinhead does not deserve to be on the same tier as Pinhead, as Freddy Krueger, as Jason.
Yeah, I don't even know if it was it supposed to be like a scary film, or is this
The fact that you have to ask that does not deserve any more thumbs. Yeah. So this is the part of the show where I would turn to Twitter for all of the observations and guest questions and analyses from Twitter followers. But this is the first episode, so we don't have any.
Right.
Hopefully next time.
Bad on you, audience, for not predicting the show and sending stuff ahead of time.
Bad.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because next week we're going to be watching another movie, and you can be sending in all of your observations, all of your questions. Next week, I believe we are going to be watching Creepshow. So you can turn in next week for Creepshow. Mike, do you have any other comments you wanted to say? I mean, do you want to talk about where people can find you?
No, they can't find me.
They can't.
Yeah, that's good. You can find me through Kyle. That's how if you want to get in touch, as indirectly as possible.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
All right, join us for more on the Gory Days. Talk to you later. Bye.
The Gory Days.
Hey everybody, Kyle here. Thanks for listening to the first episode of the Gory Days. And remember, if you want your thoughts on each week's movies heard on the podcast, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at The Gory Days. And look for more episodes each and every week on the Apple Podcast app. See you next time.
The Gory Days, the Gory Days, the Gory Days. The Gory Days.